A thin gray cat came out from inside the door of the house, made its way over the old rugs and blankets that were spread on the floor, and went to the door of the room. In complete silence, the animal crawled on a piece of old carpet, stretched its tail flat on the floor, and swung its end. The cat sat on its two legs and stared at a point. The driver looked at him and said, "Oh my God, who is this?" Hushang reached out, but the cat sat back to be out of the driver's reach. The old man was drawing lines on the carpet with his fingers, and his wrinkled hands could be seen under the dim light of the room's lantern. After taking a sip of his tea, Hushang said to the old man, "Sir Mashallah, tonight, according to the promise I made to you and the grandma, I came to take you to visit the city of Mashhad." The deep wrinkles around the grandmother's eyes were stretched and her pale cheeks trembled. While there was a ring of tears in his eyes, he prayed for the driver. But the old man was still staring indifferently at the carpet and did not speak. A small ant ran up the old woman's shirt and slipped on the wrinkled skin of her neck. She quickly reached out and picked it up and pressed it between her fingers. The door of the house opened with a moaning sound, and a tall woman wearing colorful clothes and a green handkerchief entered the house. Her eyes were puffy and dull. The skin on the jaws of her face was loose and hanging on both sides. Hania greeted. Grandma turned her head and answered. The woman went a little further and turned her face towards the grandmother and said, "I heard the sound of Mr. Hushang's car." Then she stared at the driver. Then she said something in Grandma's ear slowly. This time, the grandmother nodded her head in approval and gently stroked the woman's head with her hands. The fire in the stone stove was going out, and the grandmother threw some pieces of wood into the fire. The gray cat moved from its place again and pulled its body forward. Then he slowly moved towards the corner of the house. A black copper pot was boiling on top of a stone stove, and a white heater was rising from the side of the door. When the bright rays of the sun lit up the sky a little in the morning, the light of the lanterns inside the village houses looked pale. All the necessary equipment was packed and placed in the back of the truck. The driver had his blue coat hanging over his shoulders and was walking around the truck. The old man staggered towards the truck while yawning. Sunlight quickly covered the area, and the stars were no longer visible in the sky. The lanterns that were still lit on the walls of the houses seemed so dim that even their yellow light could not be seen on the surrounding walls. The rocky road, which stretched over lands and hills with red and gray soil, twisted up and down towards the mountains and valleys and flowed in the middle of a deep valley towards a desert without water or grass. They had been driving slowly down the mountain road all day and stopped whenever the car's engine overheated or a plume of steam rose into the air from the punctured radiator in front of the car. The old truck was winding on the dirt road. The sunlight filled the interior of the car in a blinding way. Now there was a heavy silence between them. The grandmother, who was sitting on the seat next to the driver, was looking at the road with half-opened eyes, and Mr. Mashallah, who was sitting next to her, had closed his eyes and placed his elbow on the edge of the car window. The skin of his hand was red under the cruel sun. Hushang slightly shifted himself on the broken seat. Then he changed the steering wheel of his car and sighed and said, "If there is no problem, we will reach Mashhad tomorrow." The driver was holding the steering wheel with one hand and placed his other hand on the lever of the car. The old man was leaning on the edge of the window with his elbow, and his head was bending from side to side with every strong shake of the car. Grandmother yawned slowly and opened her half-opened eyes and said in a muffled voice, "I have to go to the bathroom." The driver said, "Let's get to the first village. There is a settlement on our way." The old woman started to twist and said again that I have to go to the bathroom. The driver increased his speed and stopped on the side of the road when they reached some short bushes. Mr. Mashallah opened the car door, jumped out, and hurriedly dragged the old woman along with him into the road and took her to the back of the bushes and held her so that she would not fall. The driver shifted a little on the old seat. His face was sunburned from being under the rays of the sun. Mr. Mashallah called the driver and said, "Hushang, don't you want to come down?" The driver quickly turned off the car and got out. Then he walked towards the trees on one side of the road. The woman's footsteps passed through the trees and sat on the grass. Above him, large pieces of clouds moving towards the west were seen in red. Then, a brief table of lunch was spread, which consisted of a few slices of tandoori bread and a dish full of cheese. The truck was moving along the road in the darkness of the night. Now and then, the eyes of an animal or a wild cat, which were placed on both sides of the road in front of the light of the truck's lights, sparkled. The grandmother was sleeping on her chair, and Mr. Mashallah was also silent. There was a dark and lonely road in front of the car and a flat plain on both sides of the road that led to the black mountain range that looked like terrible ghosts in the darkness of the night. The wheels of the truck continued to travel along the road and through the rough hills and rocks. A sound was heard from inside the hood of the truck, and the car's radiator water had boiled. The driver had to slow down so as not to put pressure on the car. The car was twisting and turning on top of a road in the middle of a dead land. White and gray rocks were seen that had no traces of life. Hushang cleaned the windshield of the car with a handkerchief so that he could see the road in the dark. They crossed the highest part of the hill and moved towards the flatlands. Meanwhile, the car's fan started to cool the radiator water. The beautiful moonlight was illuminating the expanse of the desert. The sky was blue indigo among the stars of the night, and the crescent moon seemed lost and invisible under pieces of clouds. The truck was moving slowly along the dark road, and the headlights shining on the road kept a short distance. The driver's eyes were tired and his heavy eyelids could not stay open. The monotonous sound of the truck engine and the cold wind creeping in through the car window also increased the feeling of fatigue in the driver. In a moment, a long shadow passed in front of his car. There was a strong collision with the car lights. The driver pressed his foot on the brake pedal with all his strength. The car shook violently and a noise was heard from the wheels, and then it stopped. Grandma hurriedly turned her head and let out a short scream. But Mr. Mashallah, who had fallen asleep, pressed his foot firmly on the floor of the car and hooked his right hand on the top of the door handle. Then he said with apprehension that maybe an animal or a bird had hit the car. The driver turned his head back, confused for a moment. His neck muscles were stiff and his face looked tired. The old woman's legs were numb, her body was trembling and her breaths were numbered. Mr. Mashallah also said to the driver, "Whatever happened, it's over. You shouldn't stop. Let's get out of here." The grandmother, who was still shaking with fear, said, "I heard a scream." Mashallah's staring eyes returned to the side mirror of the car, but it was as if he could not see anything in the dark. His lips tried to say something, but he was unable to speak. Hushang wanted to get out of the car and even put his hand close to the door handle. But he hesitated for a moment, then gave up his decision. He turned the car switch and the car vibrated with a loud noise, but it turned off again. Hushang growled under his breath, "Curse the devil." He tried to start the car again, but the car engine started and then turned off. The old woman was nailed to the chair, silent and stunned. Suddenly, it all seemed like a dream. She turned his face towards the driver, but fear was still visible in her eyes. The driver gripped the steering wheel of the car tightly. The road was silent and dark and no sound could be heard. He turned the car switch again. A rattling sound could be heard from inside the engine. He tried to start the car again but failed. Then he pressed his foot on the gas pedal and listened to the sounds again. The driver got out of the car worriedly. Extreme cold and dense darkness reigned over the deserted road. He went in the back of the car and looked under the tires of the car's wheels. Nothing could be seen in the dark. The driver put his hand into his jacket pocket and took out a small lighter. He pressed the lighter button and lit the small flame. Then he went to the front of the car and raised the hood of the car, when suddenly something strange happened. Dear friends, we have worked hard to prepare this video. Please subscribe to the channel and like the video to support us so that we can make more interesting videos for you.
Look at me sometimes like all you want to do is run. Hear me out, hear me out. It's all the things you never show. There are the things I when you're next to me, I feel like you were gone. It's all the things you never show. They're all the things I want to know. Secrets start in your heart so slow. But if you don't